Hello, it's David Clarke here from DVC Training, and I'm going to take a quick look at what's new in EDIUS 9.1. The biggest thing that's new is H.265 encoding. So if I just come up to the print to file dialog box, you'll notice I've now got a new option here, which is this one, H.265. You should be familiar with H.264, which is what we use for Blu-ray discs and MP4 files. H.265 is basically the same kind of thing, but more advanced and more compressed. The big advantage of H.265 over H.264 is you should be able to squeeze a decent picture into a smaller amount of space. We were able to read H.265 files in EDIUS 8, now with EDIUS 9 you can make them. At the moment, with EDIUS 9.1, it's actually limited to only computers with certain hardware inside of them. So I've got what's called a Coffee Lake processor inside of this computer, and it's got Intel QuickSync, and that can make H.265 files. It's pretty much like making H.264. You select it, choose your settings, click on Export. You've got a bunch of parameters, which are pretty much the same as you would have for H.264. If you go to the extended settings, you notice you can do it in 8-bit or 10-bit. You can do the same in H.264 and EDIUS 9, and you set up your bit rates, and then you set it encoding. Let's go to Superfine, give it a name obviously. You'll notice it's making an MP4 file. H.264 makes MP4 files, and H.265 makes MP4 files, and in fact H.265 can be in other formats as well. It can be in all sorts of different wrappers, just like H.264. But anyway, give it a name, click on Save, and off it goes and makes it. And there we are, you can see it starts going. Now I've got a timeline here that's about 2 hours and 44 minutes, and you can see it says it's going to take 1 hour and 40 minutes to export it. And that's because it uses the hardware which is built into my Coffee Lake processor. If I pull up the Task Manager, this is the latest version of Windows 10, which now has an option to tell you what the performance is of your particular graphics cards, and you'll notice, yeah, I'm using 100% processing on the graphics card, the Intel graphics card, which is built into my processor. And that's it, that's QuickSync in action. And incidentally, I'm getting 100% processing power used here on this computer because my timeline's just straight cuts. If I had a timeline which is more like a normal timeline, which is a mixture of effects and cuts and titles and transitions and so on, you might not see 100% because some of the CPU power will be going ahead to make those transitions and cuts and rendering those, and then the GPU is doing the rest of the encoding. So don't worry if you don't see this at 100%. On a really busy timeline, I've seen this at maybe 50% whilst the CPU is working hard making up effects and colour correction and so on. Of course, there's nothing new about that with EDIUS 9.1. It's exactly the same if you're using QuickSync on EDIUS 8 to make H.264 files. The new thing about EDIUS 9.1 is the fact that you can make H.265. If you don't have a processor with QuickSync, then it doesn't work. So let's just pop on to a Xeon system here, and I'm going to come up, choose H.265 for the export. I got a message basically saying, no, you can't do it because you don't have the hardware. I'm assuming there will be support for software encoding of H.265 in a future version of EDIUS, it's just not in EDIUS 9.1. Of course, software encoding is going to be slower than hardware encoding, just like it is for H.264. Now, because I'm using QuickSync, we have all the same stuff as you do if you're using QuickSync for H.264 exporting. So, for example, you have to have a monitor plugged into the graphics card that's built into the motherboard. So if you're using this kind of processor, there is a graphics card which is built into the processor, and you make it work by using the monitor connections which are built into the motherboard. Now you'll probably have another graphics card as well, like in this system I've got an NVIDIA graphics card and I've got the built-in graphics card. So I've got two screens. The main screen is running on the NVIDIA and the second screen is running off the QuickSync card, off the built-in one. And that's how you have to plug it in. You've got to plug in two screens somehow. If you've only got one screen, then you've got to actually have two cables going from your computer to two different holes on that one screen. So at least there's something plugged into it. Otherwise, QuickSync doesn't work. So it's exactly the same for H.264. Now, once you've got that going, off you go. You can make H.265 files. Of course, QuickSync also helps you play back certain formats. So it helps you play back H.264 and H.265 files. Now, apart from being limited to just processors that have got QuickSync, it's also limited to only the latest versions of those processors, so what they call the 6th, 7th and 8th generation of the Intel processors. These processors are also called Skylake, KB Lake and Coffee Lake, and these are the ones that can encode H.265. If you've got a Skylake processor, which is a 6th generation processor, then you can only encode H.265 in 8-bit. If you've got a Coffee Lake or a Kaby Lake, then you can encode it in 10-bit. Obviously, like I said, I've got a Coffee Lake. Coffee Lake is just the latest Intel i7 processor, which, as you'll notice here, is seen as having 12 cores. It's actually 6 real cores with hyperthreading. Very nice processor, very fast. Obviously, things are getting better all the time. Pretty much all the systems I used to sell had a processor that could use QuickSync, so anybody that's got one in the last 3 years should be able to make H.265. But that's kind of the biggest thing that we've got inside of EDIUS, is the ability to make H.265. There's a couple of other changes to Minx, so let's have a look at those. So here you can see I'm inside of Minx, and here's a catalogue that's been created with some pictures and video I took on my mobile phone. Now the changes we've got inside of Minx are you can tag lots of files at once, there's a different way of previewing lots of files, and you can make subclips in a storyboard. So let's have a look at each of those. First of all, tagging. So when you've got clips in a catalogue, you'd probably tag them with different bits of information which you can use later to search for them. So, for example, this clip here, I could tag, and so I could say this is the South Downs, which is where I have to take the picture. And now it's got a tag, and later on I can use that tag to create a smart catalogue with just all the clips that are tagged with South Downs and so on. So now what we have is the ability to tag lots of clips at once with a keyboard shortcut. What you do is you head up to the edit heading and choose tagging, and then you assign different tags to different keyboard shortcuts. So I've got this South Downs tag. If I click on the plus, I can choose that. And now I can assign that tag to a bunch of clips just by going Control and 1. So yeah, let's see how that works. Just select a bunch of clips, Control 1. Nothing appears to have happened, but if you look at them individually, you can see now they've got a tag of South Downs. If I was to make up another tag, so I've made up a couple of extra tags there to go with that particular shot. Again, go back to the tagging heading, and I can now assign Hills and Sussex to those two. So if I want to tag a bunch of clips with Sussex, then all I've got to do is select your clips and go Control 3. So a simple way of letting you tag things quite easily. You have to make the tags first. So what you do is you go off and make a couple of tags on a clip, but then you can assign them to keyboard shortcuts up here. Second new thing we've got is the ability to preview a whole bunch of stills at once. But if I select these stills here, right click and say Preview, it now pops up with a window where you can see I've actually got 4 different stills selected. I can select up to about 8 stills. You can't do it with video clips, you can only do it with stills. Once I'm in here, I can just double click on one of the clips and it'll go back and have that one selected. Although if you're using one screen, as I am here, sometimes if I double click on that, I've accidentally also selected the one that happened to be under the cursor when I did it. But mainly it's just a way of seeing a whole bunch of stills at once. Once you're in there, you've got a little information button where you can do things like you can hide the particular clip, stick it in the favourites, or just get out of the preview. But if that's it, it's just a way of previewing lots of images at once. The next thing we've got is the ability to make subclips up in the storyboard. So I'm going to make up a new storyboard. I'm just going to grab a couple of clips and put them in there, open the storyboard up. And obviously here you can just look at the clips and then you can mark a start point and an end point, start point and end point, and so on. And what you can do is to basically make up a subclip. I'm going to duplicate that so we've got it in there twice, just so you can see what the difference is. Now if I take the original version, right click on it and say set as subclip, or click B as it says there, then you'll notice my entire clip now consists of what was there between the in and the out points. This was the whole clip. This is now the bit that is seen. It's just like using a subclip inside of EDIUS. Then of course I can come down here and use a different bit, and if I want to I can make that as a subclip. So it makes it a bit nicer to see them up in the display here. If you decide you don't want a subclip anymore, you right click on it and say cancel subclip. On my video about using Minx, I did explain about storyboards and how you can do a rough cut in here and then bring it into EDIUS. So let's see what happens with a subclip. Okay, all I do is go into EDIUS, go to the source browser, refresh it, and then you should see your storyboard down here. And I'm just going to right click and say add it to the bin. Now you might notice I got a little error message there saying the storyboard frame rate is different to the project. My project is a 25 frames a second project, and of course I made this up rather quickly and didn't notice that it's set to 2997. But that's easy. I can just click on this thing, change it to 25p to match the project, go back to EDIUS, refresh that, And now I can import it because it is the same. That little bit there was nothing to do with the storyboard itself. It's literally, sometimes that happens when I'm making storyboards. I don't notice what they're actually set to. But anyway, open up the storyboard. You can see I've got the edit here. If I take these clips and add them into the bin, so in particular it'll be this one and this one were the two subclips. You'll notice they're not subclips in EDIUS anymore. There's still the entire clips with an in and an out point. But still, that's a useful addition into the storyboard. There's also another couple of small changes inside of Minx, just dealing with how it deals with metadata off certain formats. But that's basically what's in the 9.1 release that came out in January of 2018. So far there's been two releases of EDIUS 9. The initial one, which added in mainly HDR, but also the ability to output 50p and 60p UHD through certain Blackmagic cards, and also 10-bit H.264. And now we've also got the ability to make H.265 if you've got the right kind of processor. On top of that, of course, you've got the ability to have New Blue Titler Pro 5 through the OFX bridge, which is free with EDIUS 9. If you want more information about EDIUS 9, visit my website, www.dvctraining.co.uk. You can also order EDIUS through the links on my website there. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel to get more videos as they're released. And also follow me on my DVC Training Facebook page for news and updates on the world of video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.